Welcome to Connect at 51, the online Bible study from the Midtown Connect groups of C3 Church, Manhattan. For those of you joining us for the first time, this video has been made so that you and a group can get together, watch until you see a question screen like this, and then share your answers with each other. We're living in unprecedented times, so today the first question reflects this tone, and it is this: when have you been treated unjustly, and how did it make you feel? Justice is in God's nature. We are made in His image and share that same innate desire for justice. So when we see a failure of justice, there is a visceral emotional response, which we are seeing now on a national scale. Today we are going to explore what God intended justice to look like when He first gave His law to Moses in Exodus 20. We'll start at the beginning of the chapter and then move to the last 5 commandments. And God spoke all these words: I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. As we read these famous words, they begin with the declaration, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Just prior to this, these people were slaves under the Pharaoh. They were forced into labor, beaten, their children were killed en masse, they were oppressed. But now that they are freed, God gives them the law. Why do you think they are given the 10 Commandments now? As slaves, there was no choice on how they could live their lives. To disobey their slave masters was to be whipped, tortured, or killed. But now they had been released from slavery, there is a choice on how to live, how to speak, and how to act. And God's plans for His people are to establish a nation in the promised land. This new society of millions of free people required rules for living, otherwise there'd be anarchy. To demonstrate this idea, let's consider this question: what happens when these laws are broken? We don't have to guess at the answer to this, as there are clear examples from history when these laws were broken. King David coveted his neighbor's wife, stole her, committed adultery, lied about it, and murdered her husband. The result of this was civil war, division in the family, and the death of many, including several of David's own children. From this and numerous other examples, we learn that the breaking of these commandments causes separation and division between people, and also between us and God. It leads to broken people, broken systems, and a broken society. These commandments have been broken in our society today, and we are experiencing the separation and division and strife as a consequence. So how do we find a way forward, a way out of this? To do so, I believe we need to get to the core of the matter. And in Matthew 22, Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the laws and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. So after reading Jesus' words, what do you think is the root cause of murder, theft, adultery, and false testimony? Jesus gets to the core essence of these commandments, that they're about loving God and loving your neighbor. For the commandments that deal with how we relate to other people, the key phrase here is to love your neighbor as yourself. The key phrase here being as yourself. You see, this requires empathy, understanding, and the elevation of others, so you treat them as equals or better. Murder, theft, and adultery are only possible when we treat others as lesser beings, when they're neither seen as equals nor as neighbours. Racism is the diminishment of the individual to less than what they are based on what they look like. We're living in a time where racial bias is so pervasive in our culture and the media that it has become possible for murder to be committed in broad daylight, with witnesses recording the act and accomplices complicit in the crime. Well, as believers, we will know that there's a spiritual dynamic to the happenings in the physical world. So as we delve further into the heart of the matter, what do you think the enemy is trying to accomplish in all of this? And on the contrary, what is God's goal for humanity? In John 10:10, Jesus describes the enemy with these words: "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy." The enemy or adversary uses division, strife, and confusion to steal, kill, and destroy. And as we discussed earlier, this leads to separation, first from other people, but also separation from God. But God's commandments in both the Old and New Testament are designed to bring restoration and peace, not just within our society, but ultimately between God and man. He gave us the commandments to raise up a strong nation that would bring salvation to the whole world. And that salvation, through Jesus Christ, did not abolish the laws and commandments, but rather fulfilled it. The words of the commandment, "You shall not murder," are just as important now as they were then, for our God is a God of justice. And we, made in his image, have a mission to see his will, his justice on earth as it is in heaven. So, the final question is this: what are you doing to restore justice to this world?